Hello, hello, hello. Let's get that sound on. Let's get things rolling. Good morning or afternoon, wherever it may be, wherever you may be. I bid you a good day. Thanks for joining me today. Very excited for every week that we get to do this. It's always fun for me. And cool to get some interaction sometimes and talk to people about and learn some things, learn a little bit about what we're doing in this design, construction, sustainability, life world. And so lots of interesting things to talk about today. I'd like to start. I'd like to start by asking a question. I'm always interested to hear. So if you're listening after the fact, then just send me an email or something. I don't want to always harp on contractor horror stories. I think the reason that I do so often is because there is so much. I feel like we can learn so much more from other people's bad experiences than we can from good experiences. Hearing how people, did it right isn't. I mean, that can be really helpful too. And so, but hopefully, I'm bringing that perspective of how to do it right or correctly. I won't say right and wrong, but we're going to look at some, again, bad contractor horror stories and see if we can learn something from them. So if we're not acquainted yet, my name's Aaron from Albatross Academy. Albatross Academy is an online learning platform, I'll say, where I try to use my years of experience in the construction and design and project management and estimating, and I'm also an instructor at a college and two colleges, to try to help homeowners get get the projects off the ground, hire the right people. I'm just actually very excited. I'm going to be recording finally my How to Hire the Right Builder for Your Project course a little bit later today. And I'm really excited about it because it's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I've been compiling stories and I've been compiling information all about how to hire the right builder for your project. And I'm finally doing it, which is very exciting. So I'm not sure when that's going to launch quite yet, but it's really something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Oh, sticky outy hairs today. So if you are listening to this and you agree with some things I say, let me know. If you don't agree with some things, and holler at me as well. I'm here for it all. I can handle it. If you think I'm a total idiot, then let me know. That's okay. I've heard worse. I'll probably hear worse later today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about. I've got a few case studies pulled up here. And I think there's a lot we can learn about them. And really, we can do this till the cows come home because there are so many. I mean, there are TV shows dedicated to bad contractors. And really, the reason why I think there are so many quote unquote bad contractors is not because they're bad people and they want to necessarily do bad work. I think that people maybe there's some out there like that, but I think people generally get stuck. They get stuck in certain situations, and I don't mean to be defending the perpetrators here because, they're doing things often that are both morally and legally wrong. So I want to be clear about that, but I think it's important that we understand why contractors are doing this, because if we do, then we can essentially get ahead of their problems, and our project will go smoother as a result. So if we're able to understand why bad contractors are doing what they're doing, then we're able to try to, as I said, get ahead of those problems. So I'm going to read, as usual, I'm going to read some bad contractor stories, and I'll probably stop a few times and just say where maybe the client could have done something differently if they had the knowledge, that you will hopefully have after being a follower of this YouTube channel and, maybe taking a course or two from Albatross Academy. So in July, I won't say the name of the company, the concrete company, to come out and write an estimate. 3 hours after our appointment, a man called and told me he was running late because the owner delayed him. Annoyed and thinking, but you have the exact same name as the owner. I'm not sure what that means. I accepted his strange deferral of blame and told him that I had another meeting, but my business partner could meet him. He promised a good discount and showed up 4 hours late. That is, I'll say, maybe it's an old saying, but that's red flag number one. Offering a discount and playing fast and loose with pricing is not something that I love. I feel like especially in a situation like this, that to me means that money or the numbers are maybe inconsequential, or they don't. If somebody's willing to just bargain with you on the spot, that shows me that they may be less than reputable. And showing up 4 hours late. So now we have a meeting with the concrete guy and the business partner. The business partner told me that he took many photos and that the concrete guy took many photos and would get back to us about the cost. And that he demanded a deposit for his time coming out and writing the estimate. Okay, so there we have, I'll say red flag. I don't really know what else to say. That's a warning sign, maybe I'll say. A warning sign number one. Number two, actually. Warning sign number two is demanding a deposit for your time coming out and writing the estimate. So that's not cool. A deposit is used usually for holding a place, and it's usually a very nominal and small amount of money. It should not be, definitely not more than 10% of the value of the project. Also, deposit is not, a deposit is for if there is to be a continued working relationship. A deposit is, yes, we both agree that we want to move forward. The vendor or the trade wants to know that you're serious about this. It's not for coming out and writing an estimate. It's not a separate cost. If a deposit is demanded, it is part of the totality of the costs for the job. It's not a separate cost for my time coming out and writing the estimate. That stuff should be free. 2 months later, we're still waiting on the quote. That's a long time. So if it were me, I would be saying no. If 2 months we're waiting on the estimate or the quote, that means that time means nothing to this person, and they don't care about proper business etiquette, and communication is terrible. So I think I would have left that there. If somebody takes 2 months to get back to me, I'm finding somebody else. I inquired and was told that he, quote, didn't know where to send the estimate. Well, obviously that is just a red herring, as my father would say. He had texted me a dozen times, visited our address, and I had emailed him and called his office. So perhaps he sends quotes via carrier pigeon. Fair. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know where to send a quote, that's a very simple phone call. And it shows to me that this person is either lying or is very, very disorganized. And neither are acceptable. Eventually, we just gave up, wrote a negative Yelp review, and hired another company. Fair. That's a great call. I contacted this concrete company again each month to inquire about a refund since we never received an estimate. They told me that the deposit was non-refundable. Yeah. After inquiring 5 times across 7 months, I gave up and filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. The owner told me that I could not, quote unquote, scare him. Then he began insisting that contacting the office manager 5 times across 7 months is actually harassing his wife. Then he began texting me creepy photos of our building at night with insults about its appearance. We're moving into a different area. we're going somewhere else now. That is not, we're not just taking our money and running, we're taking our money and running back. Reluctantly, I agreed to talk to the owner on the phone. He first insisted he had verbally conveyed the price to my business partner, and that she was not interested, so that's why he never sent a formal proposal. He claimed that he would charge $5,700 for work that we had done elsewhere for under $800. That's a pretty big jump, and that's why she had refused him. But this completely contradicts her story. I pointed out that he's asking me to believe him over the person that I trust most in the world, and then he pointedly told me that she was lying to me. He then asked me if I would delete the negative Yelp review and retract the Better Business Bureau complaint if he refunded the deposit. I hung up. It's better to protect the next person than it is to waste more time talking to someone that refuses to be honest with me. My kids are bouncing around upstairs, if you can hear that. Okay, so, I mean, by all accounts, what we've lost here is we've lost the deposit, which is not cool. It's not cool that they took the deposit. It's not cool that they asked for a deposit, and it's not cool that the deposit was paid. Like I said, the deposit is used for if you have an agreement, if you are entering into an agreement with a person or a company, and there is a placeholder for, it's more about protecting your place in line. It's not about securing materials. It's not about cash flowing your own project. That's not how this works. We'll talk a bit about that, I think, maybe in a second. So here's another one. This is it's a roofing company. There was a time that I had a roofing company come to replace my roof. I'll admit that I was price shopping at the time, and they were by far the cheapest. Okay, so price shopping is a term that is used, and it's actually often used incorrectly. I'll tell you what the correct application of price shopping is. Price shopping is technically illegal, and it's usually the term is meant for when there's a bidding process, a formal bidding process that's usually for major projects or city, municipal, governmental projects where there are sealed bids. And so price shopping is when an owner essentially finds out what all the bids are, and then plays one bid off of another in an effort to secure a better price. So they get one bid for, let's say there's concrete work, external concrete work. They get one for $50,000. They get one for $40,000 and one for $60,000. They really like the $60,000 contractor, but they don't like the $60,000 price. So in a sealed bid type situation, you open the bids, you choose which one you want, it's done. That's a fair bidding process. Price shopping or bid shopping is typically when you open the bids and you like the $60,000 contractor, but you can't justify, because it's a public job, you can't justify spending $60,000 on a job that could cost $40,000. So you go to the $60,000 contractor and you say, under your breath, you say, "Excuse me, would you be able to do this job for $40,000? If you can, I'll give it to you." And they say, "Yes, we can." And then you say, "Great, then it's done." So that process is actually illegal. It's circumventing the formal bidding process. So price shopping, if you're a private person, if you're just a regular dude or lady and you want to get the best price, that is not a formal bidding process, and you are free to do as you like. So if you're getting multiple quotes, which you absolutely should be doing every single time you're getting work done, multiple quotes, then you can then you basically just get multiple quotes, and choose the person that you want to work with. And if you say to them, if you're cool with, I mean, it's not illegal, but they may not appreciate it. But if you say, yeah, so I got a quote for 60 grand, 50 grand, 40 grand. I'd rather work with you, but I can't. That's 20 grand is a lot. And will you do it for less? That's just a negotiation at that point. You're not circumventing the formal bidding process. The other bidders may not like it because you're actually not considering their bids at all, but it's not illegal. So price shopping, don't be ashamed, mister. So they had a roofing company come to replace my roof. I'll admit that I was price shopping at the time and they were by far the cheapest. That's fine. They told me I needed to pay half the $7,000 bill up front for cost of goods. Here is where, if you are a regular listener, then you will know that this ain't cool. And you shouldn't do that. Don't pay half. The maximum you should pay for any deposit is 10% or $1,000, whichever is less. This way, there is a deposit. That means from a legal perspective, there is consideration. There is money has exchanged hands. Therefore, the idea is that it locks in the time frame or the service. So half the bill for cost of goods. Here's the deal with that. And I see this all the time, and I hear about this all the time, that what ends up happening, if somebody's asking for a deposit or an advance or something that's a fair chunk of the pretty, like more than 25% of the project's value, in this case is $7,000. If somebody's asking for more than that, it tells me two things. One, they are brazen enough to ask for a deposit of that nature. And two, they are bad with money, because if you have a business, and especially in the trades, you should be able to float projects. You should be able to, from a cash perspective, you should be able to afford the materials to start your project until you get paid for the first time. You should be able to do that. Whether you're a plumber, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're HVAC, whether you're electrical, you should not need half of the project's value up front as a deposit. You should not need that, because you should be able to cash flow that. And so if somebody's asking for a large deposit, A, it tells me one of two things. A, they're maybe dishonest and they want to take the money and split. And B, they are not good with money. And so both of those are, you guessed it, red flags. I hate saying red flags, so if somebody has a different term that I should use instead, then please let me know. But I will say it until somebody tells me otherwise. So, problem was, no problem, I thought. They came the next day, ripped off half my roof, and left for the day. Problem was, they never came back. Couldn't get a hold of anyone. I hadn't done my due diligence on them, so I didn't know anything about them. Needless to say, I filed a police report, but there was not much they could do, as I really had no clue who these guys were besides a name, which I assume was fake, and a phone number I believe was a burner number. Expensive lesson to learn. My advice is always do your due diligence on who you're hiring, and if possible, don't pay anything until the job is done. So a couple of ways that you can do your due diligence on who you're hiring. There's a few things that we can do. Check. Sorry, just make sure my mic still works. We're looking good. A few things you can do here. If you're hiring somebody, one of the first things that I look for is if they have a permanent address that they have given you, or they will give you a permanent address, or if they have a storefront. So if they're, say, a roofing company like this, do they have a shop? That tells me that A, they're established, and B, that they actually are not going anywhere. If you just get some dude to, if just some dude is coming by and saying he's a roofer, and then you give him $3,500, well, yeah, then, I'm not going to say it's logical or you should expect to get ripped off. You shouldn't. But if they have a place, if they have a permanent address, or if they have a shop, that's one thing that I definitely look for if I'm hiring somebody that I don't know. If I am, and that's one way that you can protect yourself. Another due diligence is just find somebody in the trades that you know and ask them, hey, have you ever heard of Triple T Roofing? Have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of this? This company. Have you ever heard of this company? And that will tell you, hopefully give you some information, and hopefully give you at least something to go on. If they say, yeah, I've heard of them, but I don't know. Oh, yeah, they've been around here for a little bit. Or, yeah, I've heard of them, but I don't know much about them. Then that will at least give you some information. You'll at least have some way of knowing who you're dealing with, so that if this situation happens and somebody takes off with $3,500 of your money, then you are at least able to split, or at least able to have some, something to go on, something to try to track them down and try to get your money back. Although getting money back from people who are willing to do this is not, the success rate is not high. So, yeah, I mean, before I'm giving anybody any money, I'm going to find out who they are, how established they are. Go to a hardware store. Hardware stores will know. They know everybody in town. Go to the contract sales desk at a hardware store and say, do you know anything about these guys? Have you heard of these guys? Do you know who they are? Do you have a phone number? Do you have any contact info for them? Before they rip you off. I'm saying before you give them money. So that's a couple of ways that you can do that, and hopefully not get screwed like this. Now, obviously, there's no excuse for, I'm not saying like you deserve it. That's certainly not the case. Like, we should be able to trust people at their word. But it's not always, not always that simple. All right, we're going to go to a replacing of a foundation. My contractor horror story happened while replacing the foundation of my house. Foundation replacements are very common in California because older homes don't have modern seismic design. If you want your home to survive a relatively small earthquake, you replace the foundation if it's an old brick one, or reinforce it if it's an older concrete one. We had hired a contractor. Interesting fact here. I'm going to pause here. Interesting fact. So I had family that was down in Los Angeles, and during the '94 Northridge earthquake. And what ends up happening with homes, in the older homes especially, is they're not pinned to the foundation very well. So nowadays we have anchor bolts. They're probably, I think, 3/8 inch anchor bolts that are wet set or embedded into the concrete in the foundation, at the top of the concrete, and they're pinned into, the bottom plate, the sill plate of the wall is actually anchored to the foundation. But in older homes, like in California, so what ended up happening was when the earthquake shifts and moves side to side, or up and down to a degree, many of these homes just slid on top of their foundations. They slid about 3 feet. So my uncle was telling me about riding his bike around after the earthquake in Santa Monica, and many of the homes had slid 3 feet or 2 or 3 feet to the same side. And I mean, it sounds funny, but it's obviously not funny. So yeah, really interesting. And so nowadays, obviously, we have anchor bolts, so that can't happen. But yeah, there's a lot of older homes need foundation work. So we hired a contractor to replace our foundation, digging out to give us a full height basement in half the house. So that what they're talking about there is digging down, because oftentimes, my house right here, I've got about I'm 6 feet tall, and my basement ceiling is about 6 feet 2, luckily. So if you're taller than me in my basement, it's a little bit dicey. So what you can do to get more headspace is, rather than raise the house, you can dig the floor down. Now, typically the bottom of the foundation wall ends not far below the floor. So usually that means underpinning the foundation and basically pouring a concrete wall and footing beneath your existing concrete wall. So to make matters worse, okay, so it sounds like there isn't a basement currently, because it said digging out to give us a full height basement in half the house. I pointed out to him before the work started that during the winter we had 6 inches of standing water in our crawl space, so he'd have to dewater the site before beginning work. That's really interesting. Yeah, 6 inches of standing water in the crawl space. That's not that good. It's really tricky to deal with that. I always ask or try to figure out if the water's coming from the outside or the inside, as in underneath. Yeah, because that's if you're sitting at a low point in the sites, and sometimes you can try to waterproof your foundation, and oftentimes in the olden days especially, they would pour footings first and then foundation walls on top. Sometimes they would monopour them, which means pouring them at the same time. But they would pour footings first and foundation walls on top, and there would be no waterproofing around anything. So you'd get a water seeping in between the footing and the foundation wall. He did not dewater the site. So dewatering is essentially just pumping water off the site. To make matters worse, he decided to save time by using mechanical digging equipment to excavate. So this, combined with the water he failed to remove, caused liquefaction of the soil under our house, which is basically like having a very concentrated earthquake. Very true. So if you have water that's saturated, it's essentially like if you go to the beach and you pick up a pail of water, or sorry, a pail of sand that's really saturated with water, and you start to shake it, what happens? Well, the water, liquefaction is essentially the firm soil turning to far less viscous. I can never remember if viscous means more, if more viscous means thicker, or if more viscous means thinner. I think more viscous means thinner. So they would have, the soil essentially would get shaken by the vibration of the mechanical digging equipment, which is weird. So they must have gotten into, if they're digging out the basement, they must have gotten into the basement with the mechanical digging equipment. They must have. I don't know how. If they're digging out the basement, they must have got a little 08 or something, a little digger in there, which are cool machines, but yeah, not if they're liquefying the soil. All this is not even the meat of the matter. Mistakes get made during construction. We were willing to let him fix his mistakes. He, however, went on the attack, claiming we had defaulted on payments and called a stop to work, threatening us. Here we go. We tried to meet with him to discuss the matter, and he insisted we need to pay him more money to cover the added expenses from his mistakes. You're not negotiating, he yelled at me, storming out of the house. You're not negotiating. Okay. So let's get into this here. Okay, so I think what ends up happening is we're viewing the homeowner and the contractor are viewing quote-unquote mistakes very differently. The contractor is likely viewing the liquefaction and the digging part as just part of the course of construction, and the owner is viewing that as a mistake, as in you should not have done what you did. You should not have used mechanical digging equipment in the basement. And the contractor is very likely saying, well, why wouldn't I do that? So yeah, it's a it's a tough thing. I can tell that that is exactly what's happening. And so the contractor feels like they should be paid for it. And the homeowner is saying, well, no, 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 no. You're not getting paid for that. You made a mistake. Um, and the contractor wants to negotiate, and the homeowner is saying no. And so they're not paying. The contractor's likely asking for payment, and they're saying, whoa, 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 whoa. So the contractor's seeing this as defaulting on the payments, while the homeowner is just trying to put the brakes on. And they both absolutely are digging their heels in and feeling like they're in the right and each other is in the wrong. And that is a really difficult place to be once you get into this spot in your project. Now, we don't have all the information. We don't know if the contractor was advised not to, or we think we think the contractor was advised to dewater the site. That's what they said. And but we don't know what was discussed around the mechanical digging equipment. So that's the tricky bit. And so the homeowner is saying, contractor's viewing their non-payment as defaulting, and the homeowner is saying, no, I'm not necessarily defaulting. I just don't want to pay this extra, because that is admitting that it's not a mistake. So it's tricky. So of course he gets his back up as soon as he makes a mistake, and I was the one pointing it out to him and asking why we should pay for his errors. I'll spare you that, but it was 100% predictable. So the poster is appears to be a lady, and the contractor is a man. And sometimes that can be real difficult for the mans to take to be, have their mistakes pointed out by a lady, even though this lady is, by all accounts, an architect and a building technologist, so very much knows what she's doing. In subsequent lawsuit, so we have taken this to court, we found out he had gotten himself in over his head technically, had not managed money on the job at all, and we heard stories from our neighbors about him showing up on the job site drunk. Well, don't know. We don't know about that, they say. We ended up hiring another contractor to finish the job, and in effect, we paid for the work twice over. I learned an important lesson about construction contracts that was more intensive than anything else I studied in architecture school. Okay. So, hold on one second. Sorry about that. So, now we've gotten into a lawsuit, which is obviously not rad. I always say in teaching my construction law courses that nobody ever wins in a lawsuit. Nobody wins. Everybody loses. So, now we've gone into a lawsuit, and we find out that he had not managed money on the job at all. That is not shocking. The number one killer of all contractors, be it subcontractors or general contractors, is cash flow. And where the expenditures, the money leaving and the money coming in, doesn't match up, and they don't have enough cash to float the difference. And that is really, really tricky. And that's when things get wild. And that's when we start getting really, really desperate for money, and we start playing the blame game, and we start getting really antagonistic, and it's not a good spot to be in for anybody, because, I mean, I've heard of that. It's a tale as old as time, and I say that a lot, but it's absolutely true that when contractors start getting themselves into money, like sticky money spots, when they've got more going out than is coming in at any one time, and they can't float this, they end up getting loans, and then loans get called in and they don't have the cash flow to. But they look at it as though, oh, I'm making so much money on this job, but you're not. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna read. Okay, there's another one. That's a tough one. Where was it? Okay. Okay. In 2001, my wife and I purchased a house. Sorry about that. And the block next door. A year later, we sold the block for a very good profit. Nice. Very good. Then we decided to do extensions to our house. Big mistake. We got the builder and his offsiders to work on a daily rate. Another big mistake. Offsiders. That must be a subcontractor. Yeah, subcontractors. Offsiders. Never heard that. New term. Learning something today. The plumber was a con man. The concreter was a drunken liar. And the electrician was a really great tradesman in person. There you go. 1 out of 3 ain't bad. By the end of our money, the job was 3/4 finished. The plumber did a runner. I think this person is from the other side of the pond. They've got some terms in here that I love. A runner did a runner. The plumber did a runner because of the shoddy work he did. The concreter stuffed up several jobs. Got to be UK or Australia, perhaps. The builder did some good work, but truly ripped us off. Hi, Lovey. I'm just in the middle of something. You okay? Okay. Okay. You go upstairs. Mommy can help you, okay? You can close the door for me?
Wow. Because you want it to be pitch black?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you. That is the best. Falls into the room. That's good. That's good, Lovey. Falls into the room and says, I have to go poop. Oh, that's it right there. Builder did some good work, but truly ripped us off. We ended up having to refinance to pay for repairs because of shoddy work. 14 years later, we are still paying off this loan, and the home is now 7/8 finished. Good fractions, for sure. And now I do all the work, which is better than the others did. All right. I mean, you don't have a lot of information there. But, boy, I like the fractions in there. We're 3/4, now we're 7/8 finished. So they've completed 1/8. That's a real bummer, though. 14 years later, still paying off the loan. What I would probably advise here, it looks like they wanted to do an extension to the house. So with an extension, or we would say in maybe North America, we'd say addition, with a home addition, we are talking about what should be fairly known quantities. Renovations are a very different animal. Renovations are oftentimes unpredictable because you don't know what, to a certain degree, what is behind the walls for things like plumbing, electrical, and HVAC especially. You don't know what's behind the walls. Maybe there could be some structural issues also with the build, or with the weathering. There could have been maybe moisture in the walls, could be whatever, termites. So they're structural, plumbing, mechanical, HVAC, electrical. We don't know what's behind the walls. So with a renovation, budgets, and there's less cost certainty. And so with renovations, we're talking about maybe more fluidity with the budget, although we can still nail down known quantities and we can still get hard numbers for our estimate. In addition, we can get even more hard numbers, because we know if we have a decent drawing, then we know what the square footage of drywall. We know how much lumber we're going to need. We know how much, if we're doing a bathroom, we know how much plumbing, piping we're going to need to connect to the original house. There are a lot of known quantities that we can find out before we even start our build. And that's a major, major mistake that many clients make, is they just trust the builder. They trust that the builder knows what they're doing and they're going to be able to keep things under budget. But if the builder doesn't do a proper estimate and proper quantity takeoffs and proper quoting, doesn't go through and get cost certainty for all of their cost codes, then we're all just stumbling around in the dark. And I mean, I often liken it to going to the grocery store. So you go to the grocery store. Let's say I can tell this story real quick. Let's say you go to the grocery, or this analogy, I would say. You go to the grocery store and you forget your wallet at home. You have $150 in your wallet, in your pocket. You have $150. You walk into the grocery store. You have only $150. You cannot spend a dime more because you don't have a dime. You have just $150 in cash. So you've got to get groceries for the weekend for your family and some guests that are staying with you. So now you go in and you start like mentally trying to keep track of this. You start mentally trying to go, okay, well, I know, okay, that cereal is $7, and that I want to buy steaks for Friday night, and those steaks are $22.75 plus there's tax in there. So I don't know exactly how much tax, maybe 6%, 5%. So, okay, I'm trying. And now you start stacking all these groceries up and you're sort of keeping track, but by around $100, you've kind of lost track of it, trying to keep the tax straight and the cents, the dollars and cents together. And so you keep going and keep going and keep going. And by the end of the job, you've got everything you think you need. You don't have a plan, but you got everything you think you need. And you get to the grocery store, you get to the checkout, and the cashier says, that'll be $167. And you go, but I don't have $167. I have $150. I have three $50 bills in my pocket. That's all I have. And the cashier says, well, I'm sorry, but you owe us $167 if you take all these groceries. And so then you go, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll put some stuff back. So if you don't understand, like if you don't know what you're going to need prior to going into the grocery store, how are you ever supposed to keep track of this? And if you don't keep track of it during your shopping, then how are you ever supposed to know how much you've spent and how much you still need? So the whole point of this is that when we are in the same way with construction, we have to get as much cost certainty as possible before we start our estimate, before we start a project. And too often, the clients just place trust in a builder they don't know. They don't know the builder's track record with budgets and schedules. They just go, well, you do this for a living, and I know how I would be if I did this for a living, and therefore I trust you. I would care about people's money. I would care about people's time, and I would care about doing a good job. That's how people think. And so they go, well, I'm just going to trust that this person is going to be like me and do what I would do. Well, that's not always the case. So one thing that you have to ensure is that you can afford this before you start it. And that's a real mindset shift. And that's what at Albatross Academy, what we're trying to do is, that's what I'm trying to do with this, live stream, is try to advise people that you can get cost certainty. You can get a certain amount, maybe not on every cost code. You can get a certain amount of cost certainty and know that before you start. And things have got to go really sideways. And in an addition, maybe a renovation more so, but in an addition, things don't go sideways very often. And if they do, you can build in buffers in individual cost codes to deal with that. But things don't go sideways very often. We know what our quantities are. We know how much the plumber is going to do his work for. So I'm not blaming the victims in this case, but what I am doing is saying that this process is all off, that the process is wrong. The process is incorrect. And if builders don't drive it, then the clients themselves need to educate themselves, and they need to get the knowledge to demand more of their builders and say, no, we don't need to start. I'm not starting until I get all of this in writing, I get all of this in cost certainty, and I'm not going to, I'm just not doing it. So, yeah, tough one. That sucks, and it sucks. People financially have to weather that storm, and just because they put their trust in somebody, they go, oh man, now I have to pay for this for the next 15 years. Okay. Wood floor contractor was on location the day of Thanksgiving Day. I was inspecting the work because floor was not level. It needed support to raise up where the hollow parts to level the floor. They didn't want to spend the time to do it right. I insisted to do the job correctly. They've insisted not to do so. Finally, they have an excuse that I was complaining because I didn't want to pay them. They left the job right in the middle, ended up working on my own. Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. Okay, I have another one. This is a longer one. All right. This is a bad one. They're building a net zero home. So net zero home means that the building produces as much energy as it consumes over the course of a year. We found a New York City architect, although it was problematic finding contractors in our area with experience building modern industrial net zeros. We bit the bullet after a painstaking process of elimination. They were from a nearby town, came highly recommended, and we're building a few other homes like ours. One home was about 8 months into construction. After a jubilant groundbreaking, what ensued was so unbelievable it's hard to admit really happened. After a series of catastrophes, including our siding from China apparently missing the boat, and the company we'd ordered our solar panels from going out of business, we ultimately lost $150,000 in building materials. That is shocking. That is brutal. $150,000 in building materials. That is a lot of cake. Okay, and then we get a little further into this. Workers stopped showing up because our contractor had not paid them. Subcontractors put liens on our house. When our contractors feared we were going to fire them, yeah, we believe they robbed us of all our appliances. The case is still unsolved. Soon after, we learned of other clients who fell prey to the same company's malfeasance. Great word. Malfeasance. Okay. Let's start at the top here. Our siding from China apparently missing the boat. Boy, oh boy. I would have some questions about that. Our siding from China apparently missing the boat. I have ordered many items from overseas. I've not had this happen. I had doors, sliding doors once show up for 4 months late. Sliding doors, like glass doors, well, they weren't just sliding, they're swing doors and sliding doors. Show up 4 months late. So do you know what it's like to try to finish a project without doors? Like try to keep the project moving without doors? It's hard. Especially we were building through the winter too. So I had to basically build, use construction doors and try and pump heat into the building to try to get the drywall to acclimate to the temperature and get drywall mud to cure, because drywall mud doesn't cure under certain temperatures. It needs to be like 20 degrees or 68 68, 70 degrees to cure. So, woof. Okay. Our siding from China apparently missing the boat. Boy, I don't know. I feel like there's got to be some insurance for something like that. The company we'd ordered our solar panels from going out of business. That's icky. I mean, not a lot to maybe learn from that, maybe other than trying to do your research and figure out how long these companies have been in business. Yeah, I mean, yikes. Okay, now we get into the guts of this. Workers stopped showing up because their contractor had not paid them. That is a tricky little bit here. So how this works is subcontractors are typically paid. It depends how this contract is set up. So if you're the owner, I'm going to try to, I wish I could draw something here, but you're the owner, you're at the top of this mountain, I'll say. You're at the top of the pyramid. You have the money and you are paying. And so that chain of command, who you are paying, is actually a very important part of setting up a contract structure that is advantageous for the owner. So sometimes, and this is not unusual, I don't disagree with this payment structure at all. So owner pays builder, and builder pays all the subcontractors below. That's totally fine. Now, what happens is, and why this happens is, as I mentioned before, is the owner pays builder, and if builder is in a negative cash flow situation, or builder has not managed their money well. So as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we've got cash flow coming in and cash flow going out. So if the builder's paying the subs and they have not asked for enough cash from the owner, they're going to be in a cash deficit. So that's when things get tricky, right? And so the owner or the builder is going to be in a cash flow deficit. And if they don't have enough cash within the company to make up for that, so that they can pay their subs, they can pay their employees, they can pay the subs, and while they don't have enough money, while they're waiting for the next draw to come in, then they're in a cash flow deficit. And that's when they start going, well, if it's going to be anybody, it's not going to be me that gets, less money. So they stop paying the subs, or they start to delay the payments to the subcontractors. And that is when you get into some dicey stuff also. So the subcontractor is putting liens on the house. So I'm going to explain what a lien is on a property. So if a subcontractor, if somebody's not getting paid, the only recourse that subcontractors have is to file a lien on a property. Because let's say a painter is painting and they paint the house and they don't get paid. Well, they don't really have any recourse. They can't go and they take all their paint down and say, well, no, you don't get this paint. The work is done. And so filing a lien on a building, on a property, ensures that there is at least some legal record of non-payment, and that enables the subcontractor to at least have some leverage in trying to get paid. And so what a lien does on a property is it doesn't allow the property to be sold. You can't sell a property with a lien on it, an outstanding lien. You can't borrow against the property, generally speaking, with a lien on it. And you can't pass if you're getting a building inspection or there's inspections on the property, you can't get a building inspection done with a lien on property. So there are some legal ramifications. So these subcontractors aren't getting paid, so they're filing liens. And when our contractors feared, it says, when contractors feared we were going to fire them, we believe they robbed us of all our appliances. That is a pretty tough, that's a pretty tough thing to go through. So what's happening here, I don't quite understand, is that they seem to be paying people and there's no recourse. They are paying contractors they think that the contractors took the appliances. Well, there must be a paper trail. If you paid for the appliances, so the trouble is if you're paying contractors and the contractors are, you're just paying the contractors and there's no paper trail of what you're paying for. I also don't love, like, I feel like clients should pay for their own appliances. Keep that stuff out of the scope of the contractor, but that's a totally different conversation. The contractors feared we were going to fire them. We believe they robbed us of all our appliances. I hope they physically didn't, like, rob them of their appliances. But if they were paid for but then not delivered, like, I don't quite understand how that is going. But it's that's a really tricky situation. So it seems like I'm definitely not, like, victim blaming here, because you should be able to trust people, as I mentioned earlier. Like, you should be able to trust people with your money, essentially. And if you've done your due diligence, what is a little bit alarming is that they maybe didn't do their due diligence, because soon after we learned of other clients who fell prey to this same company. That's ideally something that you're going to want to figure out before you get into, quote unquote, get into bed with them, is what's their reputation like. So a couple ways you can do this. I often mention this in my YouTube videos, but go to hardware stores. There'll be a third party. Go to the contract sales desk, and they're a third party that is very, they don't have ties to any specific contractors, and just ask. Just say, hey, I'm thinking of using this builder. What have you heard? Do they pay their bills on time? Now, they may not expressly recommend, or they may not exactly, recommend a specific contractor. They may not tell you, well, this guy's garbage, but they may sell it. They may say it with their eyes. So if you say, hey, I'm thinking of using these guys for the build. Are they reputable? Are they good? They might go, yeah, they're okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I haven't heard too much that's bad about them. So right there, if I get that, I'm out, right? If I get that reaction, then I'm out. So there are a number of ways that you can try to vet and hire the right builder for your project. That's a wonderful segue into the course that I have built and am recording. I'll probably even be wearing the same shirt, so you can check me out later on. So the course I'm building is how to hire the right builder for your project. It'll be at albatrossacademy.ca/courses, and that's where you can find that, to hopefully avoid the same fate that many of our friends here on the wide world of the internet have suffered. Because that is really, I mean, losing money and getting taken advantage of. Losing money sucks, obviously, but getting taken advantage of is almost worse, because you've put your trust in your fellow man and they've let you down. So let's not go through this anymore. I don't like getting these phone calls from people that have had this happen. I don't want to have to deal with this anymore, and I don't like reading this stuff on the internet, but I do it so that you, the loyal listener, can benefit from it, can experience what it's like to go through a project where everything goes great and it's awesome and it's fun and it's collaborative and the problems are solved quickly and they're solved together. And because I've been a part of those projects, a lot of the projects that I work on are like that, and it's the best part of construction, is building something awesome with awesome people and an awesome site morale and smiles and laughs, and it's good and it's a great experience. So you don't have the same experience that these poor people do. I don't mean poor as in, well, I mean they're poorer now, but these unfortunate people that have had an unfortunate experience. So that's it for me for this week here at Albatross Academy. I want to thank you for watching, and thank you for tuning in live. I'll be back here Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. If you have any questions, shoot me an email at aaron@albatrossacademy.ca. And if you have any questions, also jump on here and hit me in the chat. I will answer them all, I promise. Otherwise, it's been a real slice, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.